Two of the most powerful voices hip-hop ever produced. Two murders that shook the entire world. And nearly 30 years later, not a single person has been convicted for either one. Not one. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Cold cases go unsolved all the time, right? The more you dig into what happened to Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G., the more you start realizing that the people with the answers, the detectives, the witnesses, the people who literally confessed, were all quietly pushed out of the way before anything could stick. So let's go back to September 7th, 1996. And I mean all the way back, because the setup for that night is just as important as what happened. Tupac Shakur was at the top of his game. He had just dropped All Eyes on Me. He was riding with Death Row Records. He was untouchable, or so everyone thought.
How the fuck Snoop gonna tell the world that them is his homies?
Look, calm down, I'ma handle it, all right?
Calm down.
Now who the fuck are you yelling at?
That night, Tupac and Death Row CEO Suge Knight were ringside at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas to watch Mike Tyson knock out Bruce Seldon in the first round. The whole thing lasted less than 2 minutes. And as everyone is filing out of the arena, Tupac and his crew spotted Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Compton Crips, walking through the lobby. Now mind you, just weeks before this, Anderson and his crew had allegedly jumped a Death Row affiliate at a Foot Locker in Lakewood, California, and snatched a Death Row medallion right off his neck. So when Tupac saw Anderson in that lobby, fists started flying. Suge Knight himself started kicking Anderson while he was on the ground. The whole thing was caught on MGM surveillance video. A couple of hours later, Tupac and Suge were driving in a black BMW toward a party at Club 662. Traffic was backed up on the Las Vegas Strip because of the fight crowd. At the intersection of Flamingo Boulevard and Koval Lane, a white Cadillac pulled up beside them and opened fire. Tupac was hit 4 times. Suge, he was grazed in the head and walked away. Tupac was rushed to University Medical Center and placed on life support. He died 6 days later, on September 13, 1996. He was 25 years old. 6 months. That's how long it took before the other shoe dropped. Christopher Wallace, the Notorious B.I.G., had flown to Los Angeles in March of 1997 for the Soul Train Music Awards. He was there to present an award and to promote his upcoming double album, Life After Death. The irony of that title still makes people stop in their tracks. On March 8th, Biggie and his entourage, including Sean Puffy Combs, attended a Vibe magazine after-party at the Peterson Automotive Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. The event got shut down early after a fight broke out inside, so the whole group filed out around midnight and climbed into their convoy of 3 GMC Suburbans. Biggie was in the front passenger seat. Puffy was in the vehicle ahead of him. At the intersection of Wilshire and South Fairfax, a traffic light turned red. Biggie's SUV stopped, and right there, a dark Chevrolet Impala pulled up alongside the passenger side. 6 seconds of gunfire, 4 bullets. At 1:15 in the morning on March 9, 1997, Christopher Wallace was pronounced dead at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. He was 24 years old. Now here's what people never mention. Witnesses came forward after Biggie's murder. Investigators had vehicle descriptions. They had shell casings. Unlike Tupac's case, people were actually talking. But none of it ever led to a single arrest. Not one. And that's where things start to get very, very suspicious. Because here's the part they really don't want you sitting with. An lap detective named Russell Poole was assigned to investigate Biggie's murder. And what Poole found was not just a lead. It was a trail that went all the way inside the police department itself. Poole started connecting dots between Biggie's murder and 2 lapped officers, David Mack and Rafael Perez. Both were tied to Suge Knight's Death Row Records organization. Mack, in particular, had attended the Peterson Automotive Museum the very night Biggie was shot. Word on the street was that Mack was working security for Death Row. Off-duty, and very much off the books. Poole also linked a man named Amir Muhammad as a possible triggerman hired by Suge Knight to carry out the shooting as retaliation for Tupac's murder. Mind you, this wasn't a fringe theory. This was an active, credentialed, lapted detective laying out documented connections between his own department and a murder. And what happened when he tried to follow those leads? His supervisors started blocking him at every turn. They reassigned the case, they limited what he could investigate, and in 1998, Poole resigned from the department, not because he wanted to, but because they had made it impossible for him to do his job. Now here is the part that should make your blood run cold. In 2015, Russell Poole was called in to meet with Los Angeles County Sheriff's investigators about this very same cold case. He sat down in that room and within minutes of the meeting, he suffered a massive heart attack. He was rushed to the hospital, and he was pronounced dead. A detective who knew too much died in a police station, trying one more time to get someone to listen. Now, when it comes to David Mack and Rafael Perez, if those names sound familiar, it's because they are the exact same officers at the center of the Rampart Division corruption scandal that rocked the lap in the late 90s. Perez was caught stealing cocaine from police evidence lockers and framing gang members. As part of his plea deal, he started talking, and what he said was damning. He described a culture of officers moonlighting for death row, covering up crimes, and operating like a parallel criminal enterprise inside the department. Mack was separately convicted in 1997 for robbing a bank in Los Angeles of $722,000. His associate, Amir Muhammad, the same man Poole had named as Biggie's potential shooter. Girl, does this not sound like a movie to you? Because it should. In fact, it literally became one. Johnny Depp starred as Russell Poole in City of Lies, a film based on a book about this entire cover-up. The studio sat on that movie for years before releasing it, and the lapdog filed a lawsuit trying to block it from being released in Los Angeles. Entirely. When Biggie's mother, Voletta Wallace, and his family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles in 2002, alleging that Laptear officers had participated in her son's murder, the city's first move was to withhold evidence from her legal team. The judge in the case was so disturbed by this that he sanctioned the city of Los Angeles $1.1 million for hiding information. $1 million in sanctions, and still, no arrests, no charges, nothing. And listen, if you are not subscribed yet, you need to do that right now, because what I am about to tell you goes so much deeper than anything the mainstream media ever touched. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's keep going. Now let's get to what finally did happen, because even that is a whole other layer of suspicious. In September of 2023, Las Vegas police arrested Dwayne Davis, better known as Keffe D, and charged him with first-degree murder in connection with Tupac's death. And on the surface, that sounds like a breakthrough. But the more you look at it, the more questions it raises than it answers. Because Keffe D had been talking for years. I mean years. He wrote a whole memoir in which he basically admitted he was in the car that fired the shots.
So you guys are driving around, and then you hear these girls say, Tupac, Tupac.
No, we coming up, what's the name? What's that, Flamingo? Yeah, I think that's Flamingo. We was coming up Flamingo and got to the light.
And that he supplied the murder weapon. He gave a taped confession to investigators in 2009. He did podcast interviews. He did YouTube sit-downs. The man was telling anyone who would listen what happened that night. And for 14 years, nothing. No arrest, no charges, nothing. Then in 2023, after Diddy started getting exposed for a string of very serious allegations, Tupac's family suddenly hired a high-profile attorney to investigate a possible connection between Diddy and Tupac's murder. Why? Because Keffe D himself had told investigators back in 2009 that Diddy allegedly offered the Southside Crips $1 million to take out Tupac and Suge Knight that night. Mind you, Diddy has never been charged in connection with Tupac's murder. Las Vegas police stated publicly he is not a suspect. But the fact that this information sat in a federal file for over a decade before anyone acted is something that deserves way more attention than it's getting. So let's talk about this Diddy angle, because the timing of everything is almost too on the nose to ignore. What a lot of people don't remember is that in 1994, Tupac was shot at Quad Studios in New York City during an apparent robbery attempt. He was hit 5 times. And here's the part that a crime scene investigator later pointed out publicly. Diddy and his entire entourage of approximately 40 people were in that very same building that night. Not one of them was touched. Not one bullet, not one threat. The investigator made a point of asking the obvious. If this was a random robbery, why did 40 people who knew exactly where Tupac would be that night walk away completely unharmed? Tupac himself believed until his dying day that he had been set up at Quad Studios. That beef is what lit the East Coast versus West Coast war on fire. And both Tupac and Biggie ended up dead because of it. 2 men, 2 murders. 6 months apart, 0 convictions. Now some people will tell you the East Coast-West Coast war was organic, just rap beef that got out of hand. But when you follow the money, when you look at who was connected to Death Row, who was connected to Bad Boy Records, who had off-duty police working their events, it stops looking like rap beef real fast. It starts looking like a power structure that nobody with enough authority wanted to dismantle. And if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, You know we don't just scratch the surface. Stay with me, because we're not even at the most disturbing part yet. Make sure you're subscribed so you catch everything we put out. Here's what happened when investigators actually did get confessions. Because they got them. Multiple ones. After Detective Poole resigned, a lab task force was eventually assembled in 2006, a joint team with the DEA and FBI, led by a detective named Greg Kading. And Kading got results. He obtained a recorded confession from a woman connected to Suge Knight, who described how Knight, while serving prison time, paid a gang associate to carry out Biggie's murder. $13,000, she said. That was the price. Kading also had Davis's sworn statements about Tupac's murder, taped, documented, and yet in 2009, Kading was pulled from the task force. In 2010, the entire unit was disbanded, right after the wrongful death lawsuit by Biggie's family was dismissed, almost as if the investigation was only ever meant to run long enough to make that lawsuit go away. Nick Broomfield, the documentary filmmaker who has spent decades on these cases, said something that stuck with me. He said the reason Tupac's case took so long to be charged is because once you charge Tupac's murder, the next question becomes, who killed Biggie as retaliation? And that answer leads directly back to lapped officers working for death row. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, they have gone out of their way to make it as difficult as possible for anyone to investigate that particular murder. Baby, let me lay this out plainly, because I want you to sit with the full picture. Detective Russell Poole finds evidence implicating lapped officers in Biggie's murder. He gets pushed out of the department. He dies in a police station trying to bring it back up. The Wallace family sues the city of Los Angeles. The lapped hides evidence from the court. The judge fines them over $1 million. The lawsuit still gets dismissed. A task force is formed to investigate. Conveniently, right while that lawsuit is active, the task force gets disbanded once the lawsuit disappears. Keffe D confesses to investigators in 2009. He is not arrested until 2023, 14 years later, and only after Diddy starts facing his own federal nightmare. Honestly, this is a case study in how power protects itself, not through one dramatic cover-up moment, but through a series of quiet bureaucratic moves. Case reassignments, evidence withheld, task forces dissolved, lawsuits dismissed, witnesses never called, confessions never acted on. Every single time someone got close, whether it was a detective, a family, a filmmaker, or an attorney, the system found a way to reset the clock. And in the meantime, the people who might have answers either died, went to prison for unrelated crimes, or are still out here giving podcast interviews like it's all already over. So where does this leave us right now? Keffe D, the only person ever charged in connection with Tupac's murder, has had his defense attorney withdraw from the case as of March 2026. His trial has been delayed multiple times. He is now filing appeals with the Nevada Supreme Court to have all charges dismissed, claiming a 27-year delay in prosecution violates his constitutional rights. And honestly, he might have a point, because that delay was not an accident. Biggie's case, still officially unsolved. No suspects, no charges, no arrests.
I think somebody's trying to kill me. I'll be waking up paranoid. I'll be really scared. I'll just be paranoid. That's just the way I am. You know, you be seeing me. Scared to death.
Just a cold case file somewhere in a lap database, growing colder by the year. Meanwhile, Suge Knight is in prison, but not for either murder. He's serving 28 years for voluntary manslaughter after running over a man outside a Compton burger stand in 2015. The most powerful crime boss in 90s hip-hop was eventually taken down, but not for the crimes everyone suspected him of. And Diddy is currently serving a 50-month sentence after being convicted on 2 prostitution-related charges in 2025. The rap empire he built is in ruins, but for Tupac's murder, he's still listed as not a suspect. Look, if this kind of deep dive content is what you've been looking for, this channel is exactly where you need to be. Subscribe right now and you will never miss an episode, because we are just getting started. Now I want to know what you're thinking, because people online have had a lot to say about all of this. Like this person who said, the reason these cases were never solved is because solving them would require prosecuting the very system that was supposed to be solving them in the first place. That's not a cold case. That's a conflict of interest. Another person put it like this. 2 of the most influential Black artists in American history were murdered. No convictions. But we're supposed to believe the system just dropped the ball? 30 years later? Both of them? And one more person said it in a way I couldn't have put better myself. The Lapta was fined over $1 million for hiding evidence in Biggie's murder. And nobody went to jail for that either. Think about that. They literally punished the system for covering up a murder, and the cover-up still worked. And honestly, they're not wrong. These cases were never just about gangster rap beef. They were about power, money, institutional corruption, and who gets to decide when justice happens and when it doesn't. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Tupac and Biggie's cases will ever actually be solved? Or do you think too many powerful people are still protected by what happened in those two cars on those two nights? And what do you make of everything surrounding the Diddy angle? Coincidence or something bigger? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to click here to watch this other messy video.